So I broke down and I actually wrote a flowchart script for our chatbot, or at least our Nursebot. Right, this Nursebot is going to determine if you have COVID-19, and obviously this is in no way medically valid. But what I did is anytime where it's just talking, I've color coded it this darker, this teal color or whatever. When it's an actual actionable question, I've used this bright blue, and when a user choice is a yellow, right? A yellow diagonal. So if you create flowcharts, you know that this rounded ones usually means the start of something. Then squares are kind of like places. These are user choices. You could Google flowcharts and how to use their symbology. And I do this with a lot with making web apps and things like that. So this is kind of familiar to me. So, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and build this, and I'll break it up as much as I can. And there may be places where I say, hey, just follow the chart and I'll provide this to you. So let's go back to our chat fuel. And we had added this nurse chart. And right now it just says, I'm sorry to hear that. I really don't want to make all these blocks here. Because if you remember in the beginning, we set up this main gallery here that we're going to kind of go into their own flows. And instead of just keeping all the blocks floating in here, what we should do is create a group. And you see there's two choices here, create a sequence or a group. Now I do have something built in where we'll create a sequence at the end as kind of a sequence is you have this like timed responses, whereas a group is just a simple way of grouping things. So I'm going to say I want a group, and I'm going to call this group Nursebot, right? And now it's just a lot of drudge work. And, you know, I got to imagine there's probably a good way to name these things off the top of my head. I don't have a complete way, and maybe I'll come up with it on the fly. But Nursebot, right, I want to add a block, and I'm going to call this one intro, right? Because we have to have our intro. And so referring back to my thing here, my thing is, hey, welcome to Nursebot. I'm here to determine, right? So I'll add text, add that. And I don't have any button because this is what we do here. But now we're going to want to ask a question, and we could do the typing thing. I'm just going to ignore it and just add a another text, right? And I'm going to ask the question, have you recently come in contact with anyone with COVID-19? And so I'll add 3 buttons. I will say yes, no, I don't know. And so we're going to have to set those to their things, to different blocks. So, well, we could just create the blocks in here. So I'm going to call this A1 yes, or how about Q1, because it's question 1. I'm going to call this Q1 yes. So I'm going to tell it yes, create Q1 yes. Oh, it put it up here. Can I bring it over to here? Yes, I can. Okay, so apparently by default it's going to throw these in these blocks. So it's probably better, so you don't have to go just drag it anyhow. We go ahead and say, right, Q1 no. And let's see what we have set up here. So we do have separate answers for all of these. And so I'm going to say Q1 IDK, right? All right. So now we have to go ahead and, you know, it's a little drudge work, but let's actually first make sure they're connected to their respected blocks. So I want to go to Q1 no. And then I want to click off it, go to Q1, I don't know. Okay, there we go. So they're going to go to their respected places. And so now I have to fill in those, right? And this is pretty simple here. I'm going to say, well, that is quite concerning, right? So I'll go ahead and add a text. Whoops. Say, well, that is quite concerning. Q2, I'm going to say, that's good, but there's still a chance you could have it. Whatever it is I'm saying here, I'll probably maybe just cut and paste the text like I usually do. And then that's okay, blah, 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 blah. Oops, Q1, I don't know. Text, there. So I've given them all that. And you see that I have them all actually going to the same thing, because either way, I want to really know, because either case they could still have it, right? Just because they don't know, or they think they weren't around someone. So we're going to go to this same question here. So it makes sense to make this its own block so that all three of these can direct those. I could have just typed this into each of these and put in the logic. That's too much extra, right? We're trying to do this with the least amount of work as possible. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to call this Q2. Right? Yeah, I'll call this Q2. Maybe I'll call this question 2, because I don't want, you know what I mean? So I'm going to put this in here and say, do you have a fever of over 100 degrees? And this is where I'm going to add these answers, yes and no. So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to add a button and say no, right? And once again, we need states here. So I've got this one. Now you notice this one has a bunch in a row, and then there's this one only has one in another question, right? So now we can start, I think, building a little bit less blocks with these. So I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to say, call this one Q2 yes. And I'm going to add another one and say, call it Q2 no. So Q2 yes. So let's go back to question 2 and assign those. So I'm going to take you to Q2 yes. And on no, I'm going to give you Q2 no. Yeah, so we came up with a naming convention. That's pretty good. So we're there. Now we kind of have to work, breaking it out here. So yes. What's our things for yes? Okay, I'm going to say, okay, fever is a main indicator, but it could still be something else. So I'll say that. Now maybe I'll put a typing in there, and I'll show this for 2 seconds. And I'll do this one, text there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move this one over. I'm going to say it can be something else. COVID-19 is that, and then I'll start typing, because it's like I'm thinking I'm going to write you a question. And so now I'm going to give you a question of, one symptom is it does not exhibit a runny nose. And I'm going to say there. And this one also needs, right, a yes and a no. So you see I did that, and we'll come back to these, because I'm going to go ahead and this side's a lot longer if you notice, right? So let's go ahead and since this is the easier of the two, let's go in and finish this off, and then maybe let me break up this video so we're not having a 1,000,000-hour video. So no, Q2 no, right, has, well, fever is one of the main, have a cold. It's like, well, fever is one of the main components. It's likely you have a cold. Let's get some typing in here. Sure, 4 seconds now seems long. Maybe before, when it was trying it didn't have it on the right thing. Let's see. So now it's like, well, you're done. Would you like to do anything else? Would you like to see some data, or are we finished chatting today? Because they're happy that they don't have COVID-19, and so I'm gonna say, show me data, and I'll say, we're done. And now this is the problem. How do we do this as far as the naming thing is wrong? So show me the data is going to take you just over to the data block that we're going to set up. So if you remember, in the main gallery, we had this right here. And as of right now, we have them visiting a site. So yeah, instead of, I guess I messed up. Instead of the data block, let's just send them to the site, right? Because why not? There's no real big deal. Maybe if we flesh this out more into a data block, we could change that. But for right now, let's go in here and say, let's redirect to a URL. And we're going to redirect to, what's my here it is right here. For right now, we'll just throw that in there. And that's good. So that one's sending me to data. We're done, I guess, needs to send us to a message of some sort, right? Okay, so I've got this. Well, I'm glad you don't have COVID-19. but continue to practice social distancing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I had to do a little edit here because what I realized is that over here in this yes branch, I kind of left people hanging, and I want to, if they don't have COVID, to give them the opportunity to go check out the data instead of going calling their doctor or tell me they're done chatting with me. So I had to rearrange a little bit of stuff here. So let me go back here. So in Q2, no, we had that show me the data and more, but I got rid of that because I think what would be better is to then make this into its own block so that we don't have to build that more than once. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to add a block and I'm going to call this no COVID finish. It's kind of a finish. We'll see. So no COVID finish. And what I'm going to do is put in then this question. Would you like to see some more data over here? And I'll add buttons, right? So I'll say, show me data. And this one we're gonna, like I did, redirect, right? So COVID done, chat fuel done. Okay. And for the other one, we'll say we're done. And that's good. And we're gonna have to go to a block. So first thing we have to do is go back to this Q2 no, because right now we're leaving them hanging. And let's redirect them to the no COVID finish so that they get there, just like we'll get at the end of the yes block. And back over here, we see this we're done needs a block to go to a block. So we'll make a new block and we'll call it we're done. And I'll go back to no COVID finish, click on there, send them to we're done. Go back into we're done and finally put in our last, hey, glad you don't have COVID-19. We're here if you need us, right? So that sets that up for when we get to go through the yes thing that we eventually say, hey, you don't have it, but if you have symptoms more than a week, you should call. So we just send them there. So that's always just thinking about your flow and trying not to leave people hanging in the wind at some point. Always try to get them kind of keep interacting with your brand, except for, of course, if they have COVID. I think it's better just to tell them, hey, go see a doctor already. Yeah, that's some edit for that. Instead of me going through this whole thing, I think I'm just going to provide you with this, and you've gotten all the skills to get almost everything else done, right? So you're at this point right here, runny nose. Now it's a matter of trying to figure out what for you is going to work best for naming. I think maybe if I, instead of saying Q2 yes, I should have said branch 1 for, maybe for this said branch 1, branch 2, and this would be like branch 1A yes, or branch 1, I don't know. The names are hard. But you see here, as you go through this, if you say yes, we have, this could be one block right here that redirects to our no COVID finish. If we say no, right, this can be one block with a question. Then this can be one block, this could be one block, and this could be one block, and then this will be another block that these two both go to. If this one is right here asking what conditions do you, if a person wants to know if they're in a risk group, what conditions those are. So I would make all of this one block with maybe little typing pauses in between each of this list, then ask them if they have conditions, and then that would go back to this block, right, which goes down to this block, and then I will make a video on this sequence that I'm going to have you install here. So why don't you go ahead and follow along in this flow diagram to get yourself so that you could test it and get to this point.